Hello, I'm Jeffrey Peterson, AFA MEC President at Alaska Airlines. Today is Thursday, January the 17th, 2013. We just finished up 3 days of negotiations at the Alaska Airlines Flight Operations and Training Center in Seattle. We discussed several sections this time, which would be Section 8, Hours of Service, 10, Scheduling, 11, Reserve, 16, Sick Leave and On-the-Job Injury, 27, Association Business General. We had a very informative presentation by the Alaska Airlines IT department this morning and discussing some of the implementation issues surrounding our contract. I'll walk you through some of that. The Maestro program that we're using currently, which ties into eMaestro, is basically going to be no longer supported as of the end of this year. Alaska Airlines is going through a very extensive redesign of the crew management system as well as several other systems, and this is part of that. And some of the concerns are as they're replacing the system that Maestro may no longer be supported very shortly. So we are walking through some of the implementation concerns and getting ahead of those before we get to the end and we have a TA, or actually an agreement, and then all of a sudden we find out that perhaps some of the agreed to provisions cannot be implemented. So this is good that we're having these discussions now. Further complicating the issue is that the flight time duty time regulations, that's the FAR 117, will be in effect as of January of 2014. And Jeppesen, which is the company that operates the current Maestro program, has indicated to all airlines that basically everything else is on hold until the flight time duty time regulations are in place because they only have so many resources. So we'll just continue to work through these issues. It's good that we're talking about it now, and we are going to be having some more meetings with Alaska Airlines management and the IT department going forward. In this session, we TA'd Section 8, Hours of Service. And in Hours of Service, we have agreed that if you drop below 9.5 hours of rest while on a layover, that you are due 2.5 times premium for the remainder of your trip. The current provision is that if you drop below 10 hours, actually rather 9 hours, that you get premium pay, certainly not the 2.5. And what we've gotten is, although we haven't changed our layover rest, if we move the marker in half an hour closer to our rest, or if we only are delayed in half an hour from the contractual requirement, that we would get the 2.5 times for the rest of the trip. In that section, we have TA'd contactability, and in the contactability provision is that if you are on duty and you're contacted for a reassignment or reschedule, that you're required to return the call as soon as possible. If you're not on duty, such as on a layover, you are not required to call back, although you can, and if you do call back, you must do so by the beginning of the next duty period. So if you are told that you need to call scheduling for whatever reason, you can if you would like, and if you do, then you'll be required to be rescheduled per the contract and legalities. But if you choose not to, then you do not have to return that call until the next duty period. So this is actually a very good improvement to our current contactability, and we think that you all will like that provision. Like sequence, we finally got a definition that works, and that is that if you are being rescheduled, reassigned, move up, all this is going to be called reassignment now. That's for readability, make it one term for all sections. And like sequence is that if you are rescheduled, you will get one single sequence potentially that must return you by the end of the calendar day, and that is how it is today. However, what we're trying to do is to incent management and scheduling to get you back closer to your original scheduled time. If you return more than 4 hours past your originally scheduled time, then you will get 1.5 times premium for all flying that is into and above that 4 hours, prorated, with no less than 1 TFP at premium. And the same applies for if you have 4 or more legs more than your originally scheduled trip. So you would get the same premium with a minimum of 1 TFP at premium pay above. Section 10 is scheduling, and in Section 10 we have removed the minimum bid preference. We know that that's a very popular preference. However, a very small number of people get it month to month compared to bidding it. And on top of that, we feel that it is a sort of a false expectation that you'll get a minimum bid when you could actually have a very senior person who receives a line that has a higher TFP value than a much more junior person who didn't specify anything at all. They just do a normal line. They could have that lower TFP. So we have eliminated the minimum bid preference, and it's all within one window, the normal window. And going forward, what we would suggest is if those of you that are senior, you can still bid for a minimum by bidding appropriately and asking the system to avoid pairings after a certain point. And if you're senior enough, then you will have your line stop there. So we think that this is going to be better for all flight attendants. It will remove that expectation that you may get a minimum line when it really doesn't mean a true minimum line. On top of that, we have backed away from from getting a minimum line that is required by the company. There still is the halftime line that may be offered at company's discretion, but we were not able to achieve the minimum flying on a monthly basis at, say, like 65 TFP. In 10T, it's the pre-cancellation language. There's a number of provisions that make it a little bit more clear, such as when you replace your passport. Hope that will be more readable for flight attendants. Also, for those of you that might be non-arriving around the system, the company can ask for you to work a flight. Again, this is voluntary. If you choose to do so, you could fly anywhere and be paid 1.5 TFP, and the company is required to get you back to your original destination. So for instance, if you're in Honolulu, you're listed for a flight already, the company asks you to work a flight, they could fly you either Honolulu-Seattle, Honolulu-Anchorage, San Diego, and you'd be paid 1.5 TFP, and then the company would be required to get you back to wherever your original destination is, if that's what you'd like to do. So again, this is totally voluntary. It's just a little bit more of a generous application than our current non-rev availability. Finally, we have provided for the unstacking reports to be published along with the baseline awards and posted in first class. That's the new coverage. It's the old unstacking, same thing. We think it's important for you to see what the unstacking reports look like, the coverage reports, and for transparency, we think that needs to be posted, and they have agreed. So, a recap of where we are right now. What is being discussed, is still being discussed actively, is Section 12, which is exchange of sequences. The big thing holding us out from an agreement is really the open time and trying to fix that. Section 27 is general association business. And in AFA's court is Section 32, attendance. We're still pretty far apart on that, so we'll see how that goes going forward. Where we're tabled at is Section 14 is vacation. We're seeking 42 days at 25 years. So that's the extra week of vacation at 25 years like we had before the Southwest Agreement in 94. Section 16 is sick leave on the job injury. Still working through several provisions there. Section 22, what's holding us out from expenses is the per diem. We've already agreed to a fairly significant increase, but we want to have an additional increase year on year, and the company has balked at that so far. Section 29 is profit sharing and retirement. We're looking for 13.5% 401k match, and that would be very similar to what the pilots get in their retirement options. We're looking for the pilot Me Too to a certain extent there. Section 30 is training. We want 4 TFP minimum for the travel day to training. For those of you coming from Anchorage, doesn't make a difference, but coming from Portland or LA or San Diego, we want you to get paid 4 TFP to travel to, say, Seattle for company-required training rather than just the hard time. Hotels, the issue for us is the long layover. We are still requiring a long layover and holding firm on that, and the number that we've settled on there is any layover 18 hours or greater must be at a long layover hotel, which is in a downtown or downtown-like location. The only other sections that we have left open that we haven't touched yet would be Section 3, scope, Section 5, definitions, 21, the big one, compensation, Section 23, insurance, and then finally duration, which is just how long the contract would be in place. So we're getting there. We are almost to the really, really big sections. We think we'll get into that, if not this next session, for sure the session after that, and things I would think should start moving a little bit quicker. We know there's some restlessness out there, and just ask that you be patient. We're really getting there. We're working through the contract as best as we can, trying to make it readable, getting all those improvements that we think is important, and we'll be to the big stuff like compensation very soon. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the misunderstanding out on the line about Brian Tracy's communication that he wrote back in December called "Don't Vote Before You Know All the Facts." It seems that some believe that we were trying to communicate that you should vote yes on the TA, and that's not at all the case. Of course, we wouldn't put forward a TA unless we feel that the provisions are worth the membership taking a look at, and that we would promote that. However, you need to vote accordingly to whatever works for you and the membership. So you need to make sure to keep an open mind, stay informed, and don't vote before you have all the information. The intent was never to say vote for the contract the first time. So our apologies there, sincerely, if there was, if you believe there was an intent for us to try to steer you in a certain direction. That was not at all the case. So that being said, we want you to stay informed. So going forward, we have another negotiation session scheduled for February the 4th through the 6th in about 3 weeks. Otherwise, you can find more information about negotiations at the Alaska Airlines Negotiations Facebook page, as well as on the Alaska MEC website at www.alaska-mec.org.